This episode of Ask the Jegna is brought to you by Recovering from 2020 using the 12-step model to process the year of 2020 by Nicola M. Hurst. This book is for you. 2020 has been a hard year for many of us for many different reasons, and we all need a little help to assist us with moving forward. Let me tell you a little bit more about this book to help you make the right decision to get it to help you recover from what one crazy year that we experienced. So Recovering from 2020 was written to help you take each step of recreating your life by using tools that you already have in your mindset. Using this 12-step model, Recovering from 2020 is tailored to help you approach the shifts, changes, and losses of 2020. It is written to help you take the painful moments and find resiliency. Along with the steps, Recovery from 2020 outlines the difference between normal grief and complicated grief, with a message to move through grief into resilience. Don't be afraid to reach out and get a lot of help. Too many people were suffering in silence before 2020, and many people are suffering in silence now. 2020's impact does not have to have a lingering impact on your life that keeps you stuck. Go ahead and get the book. The links are in the description of the video. You can get this book in either ebook format or paperback. Don't be afraid. $15, $10, $5, whatever you can contribute, whatever level you can purchase this book, it will make an extreme difference in your life. Check it out. Now let's get into the show. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Brandon Jones. This is Ask the Jegna early edition on a holiday. It is President's Day. It is also the day after Valentine's Day. So hopefully you've had either someone love up on you or you loved up on someone else and you enjoyed your weekend thus far. So might not be a long broadcast today, but I did want to do this show asking us, how are the children? Most of my work has been dedicated to improving the lives of young people. And that could be done in many different ways. And it's been focused and crafted around improving the lives of young people when it comes to trauma. Unfortunately, so many of us experience trauma that we don't even realize that it's trauma. And it ends up having lingering impacts on us for decades and years on after the traumatic thing has stopped, if it has even stopped. A lot of dysfunctions that we see, a lot of things that we go through, we don't always assume that those are things that are causing harm to us. And, I've dedicated my life work into helping advance that and help people move past that. And also seeing that it's not an individual thing. One of the things that I had a pretty hard discovery, I'll say, getting my second master's degree, going into counseling, was the fact that you can't just do therapy. I was gonna say therapize. That's not a real word, but you can't just go through therapy and think that things are going to change without shifting environments and shifting groups at the same time. So one of the things that I've attempted to do was figure out how to help the community and individuals as best as possible, because we live in a world of systems. If we don't understand how systems work, whether that's family systems, school systems, the systems that operate our neighborhoods, our cities, our towns, we operate in these systems, and a lot of these systems cause harm. So that's what I've dedicated my work to. And I wanted to pose this question to folks, whether you're watching this live or watching this on the playback, to start a conversation. I spend a lot of time, my consumption of media consists of a lot of things on social media, like many millennials, but YouTube, for sure, definitely Instagram, and Twitter. Twitter's kind of where I get the conversation, where I can kind of test the waters on where people are at on things and see what people are talking about. YouTube's similar to that, but you get a lot more educational context as well. And you get the entertainment. The entertainment value on YouTube is pretty high as well. And Instagram's just a good visual place to see how people are responding to things. But one thing that I've noticed in these three platforms, and Facebook's just a place that I go to just to connect with people that I have a little bit stronger connection with. But one thing that I've noticed in all these social media handles is that when we're talking about the issues of the world, when we're talking about how to improve the community and things of that nature, one thing that gets lost is the children. One thing that gets lost is our direct impact that we want to have on our kids to provide them with a better situation now and in the future. And I think that that's one of the things that separates a lot of the thought leaders in today's world from the thought leaders in the past, is that a lot of times they focused on how the children would end up. And that's one of the things that concerns me. So, because it's funny how this stuff works. Once you get on YouTube, once you develop a following and people reach out to you for help, and then they really want you to help their kids more than them, which is a fascinating thing too. And then you start to really peel back the layers of what's really happening. And a lot of people are suffering in silence. So it's good to have these conversations and pose these conversations. What's up, Chaos? I see you in the chat. What's up, Brian? Thank you both for joining today. So last week I was watching some Amos Wilson clips. I tend to do that probably about 4 times a year. I'll go on a binge of Amos Wilson. Then I'll break away and do some work, go back, break away, do some work. But I ran into a clip that I know I've heard it before, but it just dawned on me again to focus on. And I'm going to play part of that clip because he's talking about the community, but what he's really talking about is how to set up an opportunity for our children. And this was done, and this was a speech from 1990, but it sounds like he made it yesterday. Like, it sounds like this stuff is still happening. So I want to play that clip and I want to comment on it. And then I'll open it up to see if anybody else wants to hop on and add any comments. But if not, that's cool too. Because I'm not broadcasting during my regularly scheduled time. And I want us to start really talking about the intentionality we have for our communities and the things that we need to do. Oftentimes we talk about we need leadership. A lot of times we talk about, we need people to step up. We need the celebrities to say something. But we don't always talk about what our children need and what we're going to do for our kids, because at the end of the day, we have to move on society. We have to move on, our communities to keep existing. And I know that I've been on this broadcast talking about admixture, and I'm working on a piece on that. I want to do a full presentation on that to really thoroughly go through that idea and share with people. Because some people think that I'm just basing it off of commercials and things, but I'm like, no, this is a intentional thing that's happening. It's an indoctrination process. It's a acculturation process that is taking place before our very eyes, and I don't think many people are aware of it. But I'm going to shut up for a second. I'm going to play this Dr. Amos Wilson clip. I don't think I can pause the clip and play it because I don't think that StreamYard has it set up that way. So I'm going to just play it through. It's about 7 minutes. I'm going to come back on the other side, share my thoughts on it. But and hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. I don't think I should. But we'll see what happens. YouTube has been striking everybody. So we'll see how it works out, how it happens. So, and it looks like I'm only going live on YouTube. I thought I was on Facebook too, but that's all good. All right. So here's the Amos Wilson clip. I'll see you on the other side.
But again, it's because they bought the individualistic philosophy. Because to a good extent, a resegregation for them represents material loss. They fear that the so-called gains and social freedoms that they have achieved, that the so-called successful blacks and the wannabe blacks want to achieve, will be taken from them. And consequently, the more we demand an African-centered consciousness and an African-centered approach to the world, the more they want to dissociate themselves from blackness. I'm not like the rest of them folk over there. Let me in. They fear black power, of course. White people fear black power. If we gain an African-centered consciousness, it means a loss of the black consumer dollar by whites and other non-blacks. And what have I told you before? Because we are such individuals, because we are so free, we, in a sense, are financing Koreans and other children. We are making certain that they don't engage in crime because they don't have to. In a sense, we finance or we disinvest in our own children. And to that extent, we actually instigate criminality in our own. Those of us who don't see color means that we don't see our own children of color. We treat all people the same, even though in reality not all people are the same. Not all white children as a group are equally as poor as black children. But yet you want to see them as the same, and in the end, you end up giving what? Money to people who already have more than they know what to do with. We finance the children of other groups, and then we wonder why our own engage in thievery and other forms of misbehavior. In a sense, then, we create it. We also see a situation here with the changing demographics of this country, the need of this country to what I call Anglo-Saxonize the black middle class, to make honorary blacks as a means of maintaining their position and their power and their wealth when they are no longer even a majority in the United States. To create a neoconservative black class to reward its neoconservatism and move the society from racism to classism. So all of a sudden this society is not going to be so much based on race as it is on class. And that should make the Marxists happy. You know, now we can talk about class because these neo-honorary blacks now become a part of the middle class and the upper ruling class, even though they are not. The black middle class and the black upper class is a subordinate class. It is an underclass. What did I say about this distinction? Because these two classes still don't own anything in this country worth a nickel. They don't own the means of production. This is a salaried class. This is not a real ruling and upper class. This is a misnomer to call these people such. They are still managed by the white middle class. They're still being laid off by white middle class managers out there today. It is still an underclass, but you're going to create this idea of equating these Negroes with being white, and so they're in the same class with white folk. You're not in the same class with white folk. I don't care how you dress, how you talk, how you walk, what school you go to, and how you look at the world. In fact, as I've often said, I wouldn't regret it too much if black people really acted like white folk. You know what I'm saying? Yes. In fact, I've said that Farrakhan and others act more like white folk, if you want to play it that way, than Clarence Thomas, or the black conservative. Why? Because white folks say they want to what? Own and control a piece of this what? This earth and this ground. They want to own their neighborhoods. They want to own their businesses. They want to educate their own children. They want real power in the world. They build real nations and so forth. They have their own institutions. They create their own jobs. So man, if you want to act like a white person, go at it. You see, but these Negroes you accuse of acting white are acting just what they are, Negroes. If we really acted like white folk, we would be in war right now. We would be in the business of taking from them the wealth that they have stolen. We wouldn't be concerned with obeying their laws and their rules and all of this business. We would get it the way they got it. Reach in and what? Take it. And then impose our own what? Rules and laws and legitimize our own criminality. That's what white folk do. You go to white schools, they still don't teach you to be white. No, you think you're going to Yale teaching you to be white? You're being taught to be a bigger Negro than ever. Just the fact that you're at that school should teach you something. Where's your own? Where's your research universities? How are you going to protect yourself against the onslaught of AIDS and other disease, using your own research institution, using your own hospitals, using your own defense establishment against germ warfare and so forth? You're not being taught to act like white folk. You're taught to act like Negroes. So the Afrocentrism invoked in whites and among blacks a need, particularly among whites, for a degraded black mass to maintain its social cohesion and economic dominance. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, this whole social system is maintained by the degradation of black people. That is why Afrocentrism and African identity is so frightening to the system. This is why a communal identity is so frightening to the system. I've indicated to you earlier that it is this privatized consumer approach to the world that maintains it. When people start then spending their money responsibly in terms of themselves and in terms of their self-development and not just throwing it over to other people, when people start behaving in terms of their communal development and power, when another community has depended upon our being divided and dependent upon our acting as individuals unconnected one to the other, then our coming together and creating a community and creating a single consciousness represents the end of that destruction and the end of that power. So at the point when we begin to develop this, we suddenly get an identity crisis. It was stated in the Time magazine very clearly that the development of ethnic pride in non-white people threatened the social cohesion of America, because it was the lack of that pride that maintained it.
So that was the clip from Dr. Amos Wilson. And it's a long lecture, but I just wanted to cut a piece of that to highlight what is going on. And the sad part about this is Dr. Amos Wilson was talking, that clip is from 1990 of all times. So over 30 years ago, 31 years ago, and we're having the same issues now. And I want to transpose what Dr. Amos Wilson said in that clip to an article that I seen a few months ago. It was published in April of 2020, towards the end of April of 2020. And it was done by a woman by the name of Claudette Coleman, and she wrote it for The Crisis magazine. And if you're not familiar with The Crisis magazine is also the magazine. It's the NAACP's magazine. It ain't nothing changed. It's actually gotten a lot worse, actually, if we look at things from either something, well, the only thing when it comes to the advancement of African-American youth that has gotten better since the 90s has been teenage pregnancy. That's the only thing that we can identify, which is insane. I mean, if that's the only metric, that's the only educational metric that we can have that has gotten better. Everything else has become either stagnant or has gotten worse. And there's been several things that we've tried to utilize to kind of figure out what that has been about, but it's been a struggle. So I want to show an article here. And it says, with COVID-19, the African-American literacy crisis will get much worse. I'm not going to read this whole article. I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs because it really just connects right with what Dr. Amos Wilson was saying. So, as former Los Angeles middle school teacher, I know firsthand what statistics show. Schools are failing to prepare the majority of African-American students for success. Our Black teenagers are in a learning crisis. COVID-19 is about to make it much worse. I had the same thoughts when COVID happened because at the time I was managing 3 youth programs at my former job. And in one of those youth programs was a program we had for truancy. So for youth who are already having issues connecting to the school, my staff would connect with them and their families, connect them back to the school so they didn't get caught up in child protection. That was the ultimate goal of the program. The other 2 programs, one was a juvenile intervention program where we serviced young Black men from the ages of 14 to 17 years old who were on probation. And then I had another program, which was like the level 2 of that, which was 17 to 24-year-olds. And many of those 17, 24-year-olds did not maintain a high school diploma or a GED. So it was on our mind on how are we going to continue to do this work now that we're going to a virtual format. But one of the things that we realized is that a lot of our youth didn't have adequate internet at home. And then the other thing we realized is many of the schools and all of my programs are a part of, they were all within the same school district for the most part. We had some surrounding suburban school districts that were there. But what we noticed was many of the public schools weren't even ready, which nobody was. COVID hit everybody. But they were supposed to get kids tablets and laptops, and there were some of my youth, they didn't get their laptops or their iPads until late May. Like the school year was almost, it was like 2 weeks before the school year ended. So it's bad. But let me continue reading the article. So a 2017 report by the National Assessment of Educational Progress found that 18% of Black eighth grade graders reach reading proficiency. Now think about that. 18% of Black eighth graders reach reading proficiency. And in 2015, the same the NAEP found that only 17% of Black 12th graders were proficient in reading. This means that during normal times, fewer than 2 out of every 10 African American high school graduates have the baseline skills they need to succeed. Compare that to nearly half of the white 12th graders who test proficient, a rate about 3 times higher than that of Black high schoolers. Now, one thing we need to know about American school system, it is not the best. We like to pride ourselves on being the best of everything, but we are not. And the American school system is far behind many other countries when it comes to academically preparing their youth and their young people for success. We are far behind. I remember I had this one client. This was in 2016, I believe. She was from Finland? No, she was from Switzerland. She was a Swiss. She was a student exchange student. So she came here for a year of her high school from Switzerland, or from, I think it was Switzerland. And so it was funny because she was a white chick who was like super, she wasn't hood, but she was very urbanized to be from a whole other country. It blew my mind. She liked Black dudes too. That was the craziest thing. She always talking about these Black boys that go to the school. But her influence was hip hop music. So she was listening to everything that I would listen to here. She was listening to back home. So when she got here, she was ready. She was ready. She was 11th grade girl. She was ready to experience the experience. But her exchange host family had put her in therapy because they were like, she's struggling with anxiety. So ultimately, I became her therapist. And I remember asking her about school because I would always check in. How are your grades? What's going on? She was like, Brandon, man, my stuff is done. And I would ask, like, why are you always so caught up? And why do you do so well? She said, well, back in my home country, like our education is just different. Like the stuff I'm learning in my 11th grade year, she said she learned in 8th grade. She said, I was doing this stuff 3 years ago. I was just floored because I have other students who are in the same classes as this young woman who are struggling. And that's just the difference between the educational system. So one, we need to keep in mind the United States education system isn't that great. But two, if we don't do something with our children, they're going to be worse off. And, we do this because this is what happens in research. We compare across ethnic groups and racial groups. But that white Americans students cannot be our measuring stick for our kids' success. But if we do compare them, we have to understand that we're already starting behind the 8 ball just based off of their educational system in general. So, should I read some more of this? I think I kind of made the point. Why not? Let's read some more. So, these aren't normal times, though it's April. Remember, this was written back in 2020, April. And the schools around the country are shuttered. Education is supposed to have moved online, but there are many students who don't have internet access. Learning simply has come to a halt. African American students are more likely to be missing out on instruction during this pandemic, since they're more likely to lack the connectivity needed for remote schooling than their white peers. They're also more likely to be struggling with literacy. African American students' low literacy levels, which inequitable access to online schooling will exacerbate. Won't just impact grades and graduation rates. Low literacy levels can also hinder kids' success in college, career, and life. Now, we grew up on reading Rainbow. We talk about reading is fundamental. I don't think people understand how important literacy is. I'm going to stop sharing this article. I'll share the link in the chat. Let me get back to the broadcast. So it is important for us to understand that we have to be focused on our children, not just to get good grades, but for their survival. At this point, education is for the survival of the Black child, and I'll even take it a step further and say survival for the Black race. If we even want a race, we might not. I mean, it might be a wrap on what Black is. I think what Dr. Amos Wilson was calling 31 years ago was saying we are being assimilated into being more of a class-based society versus a race-based society. But this country has been founded on so much racism and white supremacy that they have to uncondition that on their end for this thing to work. And that's what Dr. Amos Wilson was saying in that clip. And what I'm saying to you all is if we don't take the reins of our children, if we don't start making our actions intentional for them, they might not, there will be no Black. I keep saying this, like Black may not exist. They just may be dark-skinned Americans or melanated Americans or whatever, or BIPOC. They just might be considered BIPOC, as that is the new acronym that has been utilized, which is for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And even that is somewhat problematic because we know that even in that group of quote unquote BIPOC, Black people and Indigenous people's experience in this world is very different. It's very different than Asian Americans. It's very different than other ethnic groups as well. So even being lumped in that group doesn't even help us when we talk about identifying what's going on. What's up, Aaron? I see you in the chat as well. It's good to see you. So again, we have to understand that that we need to educate our own children to the best of our abilities. I see Brian made a comment that what Baba Kaba always says, that the school system is not failing, it's succeeding. Dr. Amos Wilson stated we have to educate our own, absolutely. And the crazy part about it, the school system, I would even say it's not succeeding. It's actually worse because we're still working on an old school playbook. And, if you look at, the foundations of schools, Horace Mann and stuff like that, schools were created for a particular reason. It was to rear children into going into a labor force. The economic system was changing. So parents we didn't have a feudalistic system. Then that was starting to go away. We're starting to move into more of an industry and warehouse and things like that. So they needed those men mostly to go into work. So the children had to be reared, and a lot of women end up going to work too. And we also were going into wars and things of that nature as well. So parents are being occupied serving the needs of the society, and the children are just left to do whatever. So school systems were developed, and we have a Prussian school system, which is an indoctrination process that can formulate the minds of young people to become particular types of adults. A good resource for this is a book by a man named John Taylor Gatto. He has a book called Dumbing Us Down. Charlotte Iserby has a book that's similar to that. I think it's The Dumbing Down of America, but it talks about the history of education and how the school system was set up to create particular type of people. And again, we have a Prussian school system. So it's important for us to understand how we got here. Yeah, we definitely, we are jailbreaking the education system. We are. One of the things, I think Dr. Amos, was Dr. Amos Wilson who said this? I don't remember who said this, but I remember I was listening to something, having a conversation with a colleague, and it reminded me, I think Dr. Amos Wilson said this. He said, what happens if we educated 100% of Black children? Every Black child that entered the school system ended up graduating from high school and ended up going to college. Would there be a job for would there be a job for them? And I said, damn, that was eye-opening, because there wouldn't. And that would also set a huge precedent for what is supposed to happen next in the society. If all Black kids graduated high school the year that they were supposed to, went into college, graduated, what will be for them on the other side? So we've developed a society around the dysfunction of Black people and the expectation that Black folks won't succeed. And there will be people who fall off kind of the mill, they fall off that treadmill. And then next thing you know, they become cogs in a system for others, for other industries, things of that nature, like prisons, nonprofit organizations, governmental institutions, things of that nature. So it's important for us to understand that if we have to take the intentionality, we have to take the agency over our children and to push them to be bigger and better than what we have given up a lot of the responsibility for the education and the cultivation and the socialization, to use all the Asians. We have given those abilities up to really move our young people forward. And unfortunately, we are at a time period where we have so many tools to help us move our kids forward that we have to do it. We have to. Yes, survival. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that I think that we have to understand how this works, and we have to build the institutions ourselves. And I actually think we could utilize public school. It's already an institution there. We just have to force our hand in it. We have to be able to organize within it. The buildings are already there. The structures are already there. We know we don't have enough Black professionals. We don't have enough Black admins in education. We don't have enough Black teachers. We don't have enough Black social workers and counselors. We know that. But that doesn't mean that we can't still utilize that system to work in our favor. There are so many schools that I've consulted with. I mean, I get paid to go into these places and help them figure this stuff out. But one of the things that they always ask me is, Brandon, how do we get the community into our schools? How does this work? How do they come in to our schools to help? And I would have to say, well, how have you approached the community? Do you only approach them when the children get into issues and when it's time for sports fundraisers? Or when it's time to, when it's time to elect new things to happen around the neighborhood? Is that the only time you're connecting? When do you invite the families in? And if it's only around those problematic times, then there needs to be a better work on your end. But at the same time, there needs to be work on the families' ends to invest back into the school. See, we've handed over our kids. We only come into the school when something goes wrong. We have to be able to go into the school system with the intention that, hey, you're here to help my young person, my child, or my children get here. This is where we want our children to go. And I've seen that happen in public school systems and work very effectively for particular types of kids. Not all the kids. Like, there's a school that I used to spend a lot of my time at. It's a public school, but it functions like a suburban public school. It's close to a suburb as well. It's here in Minneapolis. And those parents were involved. If the school needed something, they would send out an email blast. The next thing you know, they done raised $10,000 because every family gave $50 or whatever the case may be, because they had an investment that if my kid goes to this school is going to help leverage my kid to go to these universities. And that's going to leverage my kid to be a successful person. And those universities weren't just the Harvards and the Ivy Leagues. Those are just like institutions within the state that they champion. So we have schools like St. Thomas, Hamlin, the University of Minnesota, and extensions of that. We have various different universities that build these relationships with these high schools, and they become little farming systems. We could utilize those same principles and even try to attach them to the HBCUs. Like, it's something that can be done, but we have to be able to take back the agency of where we want our children to be. And it's stressful because many of us haven't done it. Many of us don't have the college degrees and things of that nature to get our kids to the next level. But it really starts with the intentionality of making sure that we are doing this for the survival of our children. So when I ask, how are the children doing? And then I see articles like that. And then I hear Dr. Amos Wilson talking about what he was talking about 30 years ago. I start to lose hope. Like, man, it might be a wrap, man. It might be over, because it's just so many things hitting us in so many different directions. And we're so used to just being traumatized and victimized that we're not realizing what's actually going on and what's actually happening. But we have to be able to understand that this is for our survival. So I'm going to stop yapping. I'll see if anybody wants to come on and share some thoughts. If not, no worries. The link is in the chat now. So if you want to join, feel free to join in. Talk about a few points from Amos Wilson's clip. He talked about we have disinvested in our own children. And he was referencing the uptick in crime that was going on during that time in many cities across the United States. And how, at that time, remember, we have NWA's influence, hip hop. We're still in the midst of the crack era, drugs being sold, people being shot and murdered. So we're right in the thick of things in the 90s. And he was referencing how we disinvested in our own children. And that disinvestment in our children has led to them going out and just being educated and cultivated by the streets and media. And that disinvestment has led to a lot of the dysfunction that we see today. And then he also talked about how Black children are not the same. Black children are not the same as white children. These are not chocolate covered white children, and we have to be able to understand that it's important that our disposition on our children is specific to them and their needs, and and their education helps them solve their problems. So I got two guests coming. I'm gonna bring Chaos on first, and then I'll bring you on next, Aaron.
Okay. It's going to be noisy, so I'll try to be as clear and kosher as possible.
Greetings, sir.
Well, the man said it for many lectures, not that one, but many lectures back in the early 90s and late 80s about this. I think the 90s, he went a little bit more in depth about the situation before he transitioned back in 95. But it's evident that a lot of us, it could be done. Or could be over for a good portion of the average Black American person in America. A good percent. But there's going to be only small remnants of us that's going to get it done, do what's necessary, and keep some remnants of the race going in the 21st century. I tell people many times, and a lot of people don't know, that this is the century that how many descendants of Black people will be in America in the 21st century. You get me? Right now, we're pushing roughly 45 or 50 million, wherever they want to tell us. But how many is going to be still what we call adults within the next 50 years? Hell, we could say the next 30 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can cut that down.
30 years, because they want to create a fully assimilated Negro by that time, because, most of them are dating and procreating out. So that cuts the numbers down. So only time will tell. We will see what happens. But it's evident that if anything else, if you're not really smart as a person, man or woman, if you have parents, then you're going to have to get educated fast. You might have to start investing your time in educating yourself. So I'm going to stop right there for a second.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to bounce you back out so I can bring Aaron on. But you're right. We have to get serious, because I honestly don't think we have a lot of time left. I think that either we're going to accept our fate and understand that we will have Black people, but we ain't going to have Black communities no more. Black is going to be universal with everybody else, or we're going to have to, really rein it in and tighten it up and try to provide ourselves something better than what's going on. And I don't think a lot of us are even aware that we need to do that. Go ahead, Chaos.
Hey, you have to remember, when they talk about reparations, it's going to be a point where there's enough watered down versions of the Negro before that can happen. They know what they give, but they're waiting for the certain percentage of less than before they start implementing that, to be honest with you. So, not saying most people not going to get it in America, but you got to know when and where. And what the complexity is. You get me?
Absolutely. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for stopping by. If you want to hop back in, just stay behind the scenes, and I'll bring you back. All right, we're gonna bring Aaron in next. Hello, Aaron. What's up? How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm good. I was like, oh man, Brandon's on. I was doing something. I thought you was coming on at 8 o'clock.
I might be back on later tonight. I might do 2 shows today.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I think that I think it has a lot to do with people not really healing their inner child, because I've noticed that parents generationally, I'm not saying like my parents or my grandparents, but the issue that I feel like we have collectively is that a lot of people look at their children as automatically having better than them. And so it's like a competition thing. And I don't know where it came from or how it started, but it kind of, maybe because the generations are so close together, because, as you said that you are close in age to your mom, I'm close in age to my mom, my husband's close in age to his mom. So it's kind of the whole Dr. Francis Cress Welsing thing, psychologically, I feel like our parents didn't really understand that they had to do some healing on their own in order to be ready for us and be ready to teach us and take on the roles of, parenthood. And so I think that's one of the things that I see us being kind of fading into the background, into the, not really having a Black race. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying it's kind of people didn't take time out to heal and talk about the things that we're talking about now. So.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that's the intergenerational trauma. So, when you haven't had, one generation behind you or two generations behind you that have not worked on or even addressed the issues that have gone on, the cycle just repeats itself. And you worked in education. I'm not going to say what your profession is, but you've worked with young people and families. So you've seen that when you have a young person that's struggling, and the next thing you know, you're talking to one of their parents, it's like, oh, now I get what's going on with this person, because their mom, they're not there, their dad's not there to actually understand what's happening at the same time. And I know that has happened in so many homes since COVID, where you got this kid sitting at a screen, and now mommy and daddy have to play teacher, or grandma has to play teacher, and they don't have a clue what's going on this screen. So ain't nobody learning. And then who gets frustrated? The parent, the caregiver gets frustrated, the kid gets frustrated, and then that turns into you talking back, you getting rude. It's like it ends up being this chaotic, and we have to be honest about that. And you're right, those inner child wounds need to be healed, and we need to understand what those are. And I should talk more about those too.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
I guess that's what I wanted to say mainly. I think that you are absolutely correct about the article, or what your thoughts were on the article, that the American education system is behind anyway, but like you all said, that it was purposely done to be like that. So I just think, like, when I think about my early education, it wasn't even in the classroom. Like, I know that I like to learn, but my family, they weren't really educated people, but they were educated people, if you know what I mean. Like, so they were very, like, extremely passionate about education. Like, wherever I could learn, they'd send me there. Like, if they didn't know it, I would go, it would be in random places, like, okay, bye, see you later, you know. So it's just like they found a way for me to really be educated. And I know that I'm just very blessed to be, like, live where I'm from, because I know a lot of people didn't have the experiences and the opportunities that I had.
Right. And we need to create those opportunities. I'm even thinking myself, like, I'm thinking about shifting my own business model to have like some kind of supplemental program, like an after school summer type of program. So there's a place for young people to go to and continue to get that education. Because like what you said is important, and I hope people didn't miss that, is that your parents, they were educated even though they didn't have the formal education, but they knew the importance of giving you different experiences to help you grow. There are so many kids that don't get that. They just get planted in front of a device or a screen, and then that's it. And then they're just left to just do whatever they want to do. And sometimes you got to put your kids in positions to just do stuff they're not familiar with, just to help them grow. And we just don't have those opportunities.
It's like the fear pushed me. The fear is always pushing me.
Yeah. Fear is a good motivator, unfortunately. I know my grandma thought that. She put the fear in God in all of us. But again, you got to utilize these things, and you have to be intentional about what you're doing with your kids. So what your parents did, they were intentional, and I just see so many unintentional things happen, and I'm like, man, where are we headed with our children? Because our children start to get hopeless even earlier. Like, I'm starting to see depression in young Black kids at like 12, 13 years old. Man, usually my depressed kids are my kids that are older. They're like, 17, 18, but now it's even younger. I haven't even talked about the suicide rates increasing for Black males. That's a real thing. Why are all these Black males now becoming more suicidal? Like, there's things that are taking place that I don't think we're really paying attention to. So, all right. Anything else?
No, I'll let somebody come back on.
Cool. All right. Don't forget to hit me back up, because we still got to connect.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you later. Cool. Yeah, we have to be intentional with our kids. Our kids, I don't want to say all our kids are failing, because we have geniuses, man. I meet so many Black youth that are just creative, just naturally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is high, but they don't know how to direct it towards their success. And a lot of them will utilize those skills and natural talents they have for things that end up getting them in trouble. And it always baffles me. It's like, man, this kid doesn't even realize the potential that they have, or the way that they can read body language, or the way that they can communicate to people. Like, those are skill sets that, for some people it takes them years to develop, and these young Black kids have them. But unfortunately, they end up using them in ways that are non-constructive. And it's very important that we, as adults that understand and have this knowledge, provide those opportunities so that they can utilize those skills and move forward in a better light. I'm going to bring Chaos back on, because he's still hanging out in the back. Chaos, did you want to add anything else?
Actually, I might just step out. If you do stream maybe tonight, I might come around. But
Okay.
certain things to do, so I was going right on the back channel. You know what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
so,
I got you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for stopping by, man. Peace. Yeah, folks. So, I ain't gonna do it too long of a show, but I do want us to start thinking about this. And maybe I'll do a show tonight on the inner child wounds. I think that that's important for us to start having dialogue about that as well. Maybe I can actually show this graphic. Some people may not know about healing the inner child. That has become something that has gained a lot of popularity over the last couple of years. I see it on Instagram all the time about people talking about healing their inner child wounds, and that's real. Like that is intergenerational trauma in a nutshell, and it's important that we do start to heal those inner child wounds. And yeah, I think I'm gonna definitely talk about this. Can I show this? Yeah, I can show this. So here's an example of these inner child wounds. These are 4 inner child wounds. I think there may be more than those 4, but these are the ones that people end up talking about the most. So we have the abandonment wound, we have the guilt wound, we have the trust wound, and we have the neglect wound. So yeah, you know what? I am gonna do a broadcast later today. Why not? I missed one yesterday. I'm on early today. Might as well swing back later in the night, and we'll dive into these inner child wounds and these intergenerational trauma. And I probably can give you examples of all 4 of these, either from past clients or even from my own life, which is sad, but it's true. And if we don't start dealing with this inner trauma, if we don't start understanding, it's going to be a major problem for us moving forward. I'm actually in the process of writing a book. I'm talking to a publisher right now. It's not a big deal, but it's gonna be big if it happens. So I'm waiting to hear. I have a meeting with him on Wednesday, so hopefully I have some announcements for y'all in the next couple of weeks. And I'm talking directly about how do we heal this trauma. I'm talking about not inner child wounds, but I might have to use that in one of the chapters, but talking about that intergenerational trauma and what's our way to actually deal with it. Because when you start to see your life getting better and you get those uncomfortable feelings and you're working on that healing process, you start noticing that this stuff pops up. It starts to bubble up to the top, and you start realizing, oh, that's abandonment issues I was dealing with, or I have guilt around that, or I have trust issues with people because of what happened to me when I was younger, or oh, I felt neglected by this person. And I think, the interesting thing that happened a few shows ago, my mom came on. We actually kind of talked about some of these things on the show. And again, it wasn't a lot of us, and this happens for a lot of Black folks. It's not that our parents do these things intentional. They're in survival mode too. And a lot of them are dealing with their own inner child wounds as well. But when you're a kid, you don't necessarily realize that or understand that. So that's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to come back. I'm going to swing back later on the night. We're going to get into these inner childhood wounds. If you are available, you want to check out the show, please come on by. It will be 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central time. And everybody always forgets Mountain Time. So 6 p.m. Mountain Time and 5 p.m. on the West Coast. If you are on the West Coast, we're going to go live again on Ask the Jegna. I appreciate those who came by to share their thoughts. Remember, this is a show for you to always come through to share your thoughts. You're always welcomed. And I will see you all later on this evening. Feel free, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If this is your first time swinging on by, make sure you share it if you found that the information was constructive. And I'll holler at you again later on this evening. Peace.